interviews for me personally were the most scariest part of the application process, because not the process itself, but my expectation of what they were going to be. I went to a school where nobody had ever applied to Oxford or Cambridge, so we just knew nothing about it, and I was going in blind and, was reading stupid articles which were scaring the life out of me, had me quivering in my hijab, talking about tutors who will try to trick you, and questions which were given out of context, and I was like, how am I going to answer this? I had one mock spontaneous interview with somebody in school, wasn't expecting it, was taken into an office and was asked what I thought about the political situation in Iraq, and I was just like, I don't know, I just want to study English. And then got here and it was nothing like that, and remember leaving and just being like, wow, there's so much I wish I'd known beforehand. And those are the things I'm hoping to tell you now. So, why do we interview? It's not despite what you think because we're cruel and unusual. It's because actually we learn from an interview much more than we are able to learn from reading a personal statement. So we learn more about you, and that helps us to make an informed decision. Also, we design our interviews to replicate the tutorial process, which is the main teaching format at Oxford, okay? So the tutorial is an opportunity for you to sit one-on-one, maybe two-on-one with an expert in a field, and to discuss a subject in depth. Often there is no right or wrong, and it's just about, bouncing ideas around. So it's seeing whether you are suited to that system, but it's also a chance for you to see others. Do you think you will thrive in this kind of environment with this kind of teaching style? Come and find out. That's what it is. It's a chance for you to see us as well as for us to see you. Let's talk about the practicalities of the interview. So they usually take place, they always take place in mid-December, and you are likely to be invited for about 2 to 3 days. You will usually have more than one interview. They will each be 20 to 30 minutes and likely have 2 tutors in each of them. So for me, I had 2. For my first one, I went in and we spoke very much about my personal statement as a starting point, and then discussed topics which came up as a result of what I had written in the personal statement. So definitely reread it, okay? And if you say you have read the whole of Ulysses, make sure you've read the whole of Ulysses, otherwise they'll catch you out. My second one, I was given a sonnet, and I sat outside and I had 10 minutes to annotate it, then went in and discussed it. So those were mine. And the format will be different depending on the subject. The questions that you are presented with are very much a bit like the test, designed to stretch. There's no immediate obvious answer. Those articles I was telling you about, if you read an awful question, it probably isn't awful, and if it comes up in an interview, will very much come up in context. And there will be a tutor there to lead you through a problem and a text, and to see how you respond. That's what happens. And you can ask for clarification, you can ask to be probed, you can probe them, get them to give you a hint, whatever it might be. Remember, it's based on a tutorial, and that's a learning experience. And actually, I think if there's one big tip I will give you here, the one thing I wish I had known was the fact that it was about teachability. It was about your potential and your willingness to learn. I remember being a bit quite insecure about my place when I first got it, and had massive imposter syndrome and just didn't know why I had it. I was like, they've made a mistake. And there were loads of people buying college hoodies which said, LMH, Oxford, and me and my friends made this pact and kind of said, we're not going to buy one until the first term is over and we know we've passed the first term. And then I kind of got sick of it and was like, no, enough's enough, I really want one of those hoodies. But was still concerned about this imposter syndrome and feeling like I didn't know enough, and went to my tutor and kind of discussed this, and she said something which will always stay with me, which was, it's not about how much you know, it's about what you can do with what you know, and your enthusiasm for a subject. And the fact that you came into your interview and were literally on the edge of your seat because you were so excited. You know, it'd be no fun teaching somebody who knew everything about everything. That's absolutely impossible. So if you don't know what's happening, say it. I was told not to, but you know, I did, and asked for some clarification. And even when I didn't know what was happening, which was quite often, by the way, I would still talk them through my thinking process. And that's exactly what a teaching experience is, you know. That's something really to keep in mind. Okay, slightly off on a tangent, but there we go. You might have your interview at more than one college. That's not anything to read into, anything to be frightened by. It's our process of reallocation, which is a system that you can read more about if you just go onto Google and type in reallocation University of Oxford. You'll also have student helpers on hand. You will be given free accommodation and free meals. And actually, I think it can be quite a nice experience, and you can see it as a positive experience. Like, there is a temptation, I'm not going to lie, to want to cry yourself to sleep when you're approaching that interview, but actually it's an opportunity for you to go to a new city, to meet new people, and to have a discussion with somebody about something you really, really love, and hopefully they also have that in common. So, you know, seeing it that way, I think, can be quite good for your, you know, frame of mind when you're approaching the interview. What it's not a memory test or a series of yes/no questions. It's not an opportunity for tutors to trip you up or ask you trick questions. I was really nervous about this and thought, because the tutors were like really impressive people, they'd be really, really scary. And 5 minutes or 10 minutes into that second interview where I was given the sonnet, genuinely ran out of steam and had nothing else to say, and kind of just said, that's all I've written down. And, you know, the tutor said, that's okay, Mariam, don't worry, you know, what else might you think about? How about this line over there? Gave me a little prompt, and I was like, oh, okay, and kept going. And that was really reassuring, and you should be reassured also. Like, they're really not looking to trip you up, they're looking for the good things that you do. So keep that in mind. It's also not, and I can't stress this one enough, an assessment of what you wear, where you come from, or how you speak, because I was quite worried about this. But actually everybody was really lovely. Like, you know, remember, if you are there, it's because you deserve to be there. And in terms of what you wear especially, I wore some jeans and a top, a smart blouse, I think, with that. And that's all you need to wear, something you feel comfortable in. You know, if that's a suit because it'll put you in the right frame of mind, go for it. If it's not, don't worry about it, as long as it's not anything offensive like a Cambridge hoodie. You know, we're just wanting you to wear what you feel comfortable in, because that's not what we assess. We assess the way that you think. 2 things that I would recommend, actually 3 things I would recommend having a look at. The first is this video, Oxford Interview Tips, the LMH guide.
And also I thought it looked smart, but I know lots of people who didn't wear that.
A pinafore dress with spotty tights, and that made me feel like me.
I just wore a shirt that I thought was not too casual, and some chinos. The honest thing was I did just wear underwear.
I wore a plain black dress.
I can't actually remember, which I guess is a good point. It doesn't...
Okay, so this is a video where our students and tutors basically just speak to camera and give you loads of tips and explain the process of the interview, you know, what you might expect. That can be found on the LMH Oxford page on YouTube, which you should definitely subscribe to, because we have loads of student takeovers and day in the lives of that you can watch. For example, this one over here. Okay, I know I've been taking the mickey out of them, but credit where credit is due. This is a fantastic video, and obviously they're a fantastic institution. Sorry, Cambridge. Cambridge have a brilliant video on the interview where they get 4 people who have offers but haven't yet started and get them to recreate the interview process, which is nice because, you know, it's a bit more realistic. They're slightly nervous, not very polished, you know, which is what you'd see if you had third-year students, you know, going for mock interviews. and loads of really, really, really useful tips from the tutors, and just seeing what it looks like to be in a room talking to a tutor about a subject. So definitely have a look at that. And then finally, have a look at the interviews page on the Oxford website, and go to sample questions. And it gives you a list of not only questions submitted by tutors that they have used in an interview, but it's teamed with an explanation of what might happen and what they might be expecting. So, you know, somebody might answer it like this. I would encourage them to think like this. You know, if they struggle, we prompt them to do this. So really useful just to have a look at this, I think, to unpick the tutor's mind and see what's happening there. Definitely have a look at that. When the interview is over, don't stress, you know. If you found it challenging, that's because it was supposed to be, and then chances are that's probably quite a good sign. But also it's done and you can't change it, so you know there's no point stressing over it. In January is when you will find out how you have done. If you've done well, congratulations. If you haven't quite done you know, well, and didn't get the place you were hoping for, don't worry, you'll go somewhere else and have equally an epic time.